But mainly, Edey is a journalist, editor, social entrepreneur, planner, trainer, and strategist. So it's quite a lot of accolades there in my view. And I like this label, this title that you have when you started the Iskanam in IRDA newspaper. IRDA is the agency that is developing Iskandar Malaysia. It's titled Director of True Soul Media, which is pretty nice. At the moment, he is, of course, also the board member and director of the UN Global Compact. And the reason why I wanted him to speak is because UN Global Compact is an agency in the UN and part and parcel of doing something for Malaysia and Brunei at this point. So I thought it would be great to have an international connection in this sense to talk about what we can do for Borneo in this sense. So I leave it out to you, Edey, and please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Boyd. Am I audible enough? Can you guys hear me? Yep. Okay. Right.
Yes, loud and clear.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think we are all experiencing some sort of internet connection issues today, but one way or another, we all managed to resolve it. So yeah. So thank you everyone, and wonderful sharing sessions, and most importantly, thank you to the organizers. Thank you Ken, thank you Boyd. You guys have done a lot of back end work that I believe that we had a view of what you guys were doing behind the scenes. And it's a lot of work. So thank you so much for putting it together. And now, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I know there are people from all over the world here, and thank you so much for joining us today. So now, in August 2021, as Prof. Ho mentioned earlier, the Physical Science Basis of Climate Change was published by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC. Well, the report says that extreme weather is expected to increase in line with temperature, and compounded effects of heat will have greater impact on society. The report further quantifies the need to cut greenhouse gas emissions and not exceed a 1.5 degree warming, right? So ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, I'm here to help raise awareness and the attitude towards sustainability and ESG for business, and how the UN Global Compact Network Malaysia and Brunei can help your corporate sustainability ambitions in this crucial decade of action. So let me give you a quick introduction about us. The United Nations Global Compact was established in the year 2000 by former Secretary General Kofi Annan. And the UNGC is a call to unite business under the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative. Our focus area is to help businesses with their sustainability ambitions. So that is what we do. Now, the UNGC is a principle-based approach derived from human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption, along with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. So currently we have about 18,800 companies participating with us globally. We have 69 local networks all over the world, and we have 108 companies participating with us in Malaysia, including the likes of Sarawak Energy, Bursa Malaysia, Duo Pharma, and so on, to name a few. Now, as we all know, the SDGs are going to expire in the year 2030. Hence why the 10 years from 2020 to 2030, 10 years leading up to it is called the Decade of Action. So how far off are we from realizing the SDGs? Well, let me give you the bad news first before we move on to better stories. So we are not on track to meet the SDGs. The global temperature is still rising. Children are still being put to work. Gender balance is still not prioritized, and we are technically about 62 years behind schedule, which is quite alarming to me. I'm sure it is quite alarming to most of you who are attending today as well. But on the flip side, it is not all gloomy, as studies have shown that companies want to take actions, and importance to have sustainable business models are increasing. So you might have noticed that on every other day, you now hear an announcement about companies making new climate commitments, asset managers outlining their plans for ESG integration, or regulators proposing new disclosure or extending producer responsibilities, so to say. And all this makes clear that we have entered a new era of business, one of which sustaining business itself and sustaining competitive advantage requires companies to transform their business models towards sustainability. So corporate Malaysia is also not left behind. In fact, Malaysia ranks among the top leading countries when it comes to sustainable reporting. And we have seen a number of companies lately announce their net zero ambitions or carbon neutral pledges as well. If I may share, KPMG did a study in 2020 December, and the survey revealed that 99 out of the top 100 companies in Malaysia do publish sustainability reports. And Boyd, you will like this part. We're just behind Japan. Japan all 100, and ahead of other regional peers such as India. India is about 98 companies already doing it. Taiwan about 93, and so on. Now, the survey also found that 97 out of top 100 companies in Malaysia included sustainability information in their annual reports. So this is a clear indication that they are already pivoting. And as Prof Ho mentioned earlier today, we must look at science-based targets, right? And I'm sure most of you are familiar with the SBT or SBTI, which are science-based target initiative. That's a collaboration between SBTI, UNGC, WWF, CDP, and it's important. I mean, I'm quite proud to say that 6 companies from Malaysia are taking action under the SBTI to commit to their net zero targets. And we're not just talking about the big boys. Sarawak Energy is one of them, but we also have the first SME from Malaysia, and in fact, in the region, because Singapore doesn't have an SME in the SBT as well. And the first SME from Malaysia is a Johor-based company, is Detrolic Energy. It's a solar panel company that has now pledged under SBT and getting their verification as well for their net zero ambitions. So it's not all doom and gloom. I think companies are taking this seriously, and we are moving in the right direction, I would say. Now, the SDGs provide a powerful aspiration for improving our world. I'm sure we are all aware of this. And the business and investments rooted in universal principles will be essential to achieving transformational change through the SDGs. Now, for companies, successful implementation will strengthen and the enabling environment for doing business, and building markets around the world is pivotal to have the SDGs as part of their component. Now, no matter how large you are or small you are, regardless of the industry, all companies can contribute to the SDGs. This is the important call for all companies. That all companies, big or small, you can contribute to the SDGs. The SDGs outline the pivotal areas of impact and offer a practical framework to complement and support the ESG considerations. Now, ESG, for those who are not completely aware, ESG stands for environmental, social, and corporate governance. And these 3 broad areas can provide a range of targets for businesses to meet in order to improve their sustainability and lower their risk levels across various factors. So ESG is important to companies because it reflects the concerns that consumers and employees, as well as investors, care deeply about. Now, I'm going to go back to the ESGs. Now, when we talk about the ESG, we're breaking it down to the environment, social, and governance, right? So the E factor or the environmental factor is it assesses how a company performs as a steward of nature, right? It analyzes how its activities impact the environment and manage environmental risk. It includes both direct operations and across the supply chain. So, for example, resource scarcity and management, natural resource preservation, animal treatment, greenhouse gas emissions, carbon footprint calculation, scope 1, 2, and 3. So we are looking at all this under the E factor. And what does the S factor or the social criteria mean? It examines the strength and weakness of how companies manage relationships with their employees, their suppliers, their customers, and communities where they operate. So, for example, these criteria include working conditions, operations in conflict regions, and making sure that there is a healthy and safety regulations are put in place for the employees, and employee relation as a whole and diversity is looked at under the S component. Now, the G component is very important because at the end of the day, we also need governance to play its role, and governance deals with the company's leadership, the executive pay, the pay structures, audits, internal controls, and shareholder rights as well. Investors know if you want to trust a company, and you want to know what sort of decisions they are making behind closed doors, right? So we want to know what sort of governance process, what sort of policies do companies adhere to, and it includes the most commonly spoken about, which is the gender gap, gender pay, and equal pay, and corruption, as well as a board diversity. We have a good representation in the board as well. So these are all important factors. But I'm sure most of you are aware of the ESGs. But just to summarize the priorities and to serve as a quick recap for you guys as well. Now, the time has passed for organizations to take a passive approach to environment, social, and governance planning. And ESG metrics are the three central themes for measuring the sustainability and positive impact of an investment or business. Among the key philosophies that companies look at is, balancing their risk, focusing on the SDGs that fit their portfolio. We are not telling the companies you have to add up all 17 goals. I mean, it won't make sense to them, right? So we want them to prioritize what fits their portfolio, align their business strategy, involve their supply chain, have reporting and disclosure practices, and accelerate the journey. See, most importantly, what we tell companies is we are strong believers that business must do well to do good. Right, and we are not telling them to abandon the bottom line, but we are telling them to look at the triple bottom line. Right, so don't abandon the environment and social apart from the economic returns or financial or profit returns alone. So we are asking them to look at the triple bottom line, and appears to be working quite well. I must share that as well. So now progress has been made, and hang on, let me just so progress has been made, and but progress needs to scale across the value chain. And 50% of companies globally say that supply chain sustainability has grown in importance since the COVID-19 pandemic, but there are struggles to extend the principles. So when we talk to companies, we also want them to start massaging the idea to their supply chain that, even though it's a big company and the supply chain might be SMEs, we want them to motivate the SMEs, help the SMEs as well to adapt to sustainable practices. So it is a holistic approach. It's not just the big boy, but also the supply chain consisting of, it could be a mix of mid to large corp or even small SMEs as well. So it's interesting that, the supply chain involvement is now given a lot of focus. If I may share, PwC did a consumer intelligence survey. The survey says 83% of consumers think that companies should be actively shaping ESG best practices, right? And I mean, at the end of the day, you've got businesses asking, is this going to cost me more? And, why should I do it? I mean, I'm not going to beat around the bush. This is the common conversation that we have with businesses. But businesses have to remember that at the end of the day, they cater to consumers, and consumers and employees want their business to invest in making sustainable improvements to the environment and society, and not just comply with regulation. So we are moving away from the conversation of whereby this was a mandate from Bursa Malaysia, for example. For those of you who are not aware, Bursa Malaysia is the public listed companies governing body or agency, so to say. And it's not just a regulation, but it should become a holistic approach whereby it's internalized into the company, keeping in mind that consumers are also demanding for it. On that note, I would also like to share that Bloomberg Intelligence and Edelman Trust Barometer Special Report says that the global ESG assets are on track to exceed 53 trillion by 2025. With 88% of investors believing companies that prioritize ESG initiatives represent better long-term opportunities and long-term returns. So we also come across companies telling us that, it's not an investor requirement, but I think the game has changed, right? So you have the biggest investor in the world, BlackRock, they have put out the word that they will be working or investing more in ESG reporting companies and things like that. So to say that the investor market is not looking at it, I would beg to differ. The investors are looking at it, and it is important to keep in mind that apart from the customers that you are catering to who are asking about it, your investors are also asking about it, and the eventuality of it becoming a sort of a third license to operate for your business. So eventually, apart from asking you if your company is registered, if your company is audited, then the third question might be, does your company do ESG reporting? Does your company do sustainability reporting? So it's going to become a business case whereby it must be a strategy. I would also like to mention here that some companies do say that we have a CSR practice. That's awesome, because that gives back to the community. But we must remember that sustainability is a business strategy. It cannot be just your corporate social responsibility, but it must be holistic enough to reshape the business strategy, because there is financial aspects and elements to it. So it's not just purely CSR, but it's part of your business strategy. Now, we call on companies large and small to work with us. So over at UNGC, we welcome all. And apart from the global tools and resources that we have a lot of global tools from the UNGC Academy as well. Our academy is a virtual academy. We have over 100 courses inside there for companies to learn from. We also have localized content, such as our Maju Toolkit. Maju Toolkit has been internationally recognized by Oxford. And we also launched our Climate Action Guide, among all the other resources that we have. So all these resources are free of charge. So we don't charge you anything. You are happy. You can happily use all our resources. I'll be happy to share the links, and feel free to reach out to me if you need to know more. I'm happy to share 2 days ago, Bursa Malaysia launched the Corporate Sustainability Practitioner Competency Framework, which was developed by us. And it's a co-effort between Bursa Malaysia and us. And we are also looking to launch a SME Access Index early next year, which will enable banks to screen SMEs in a more robust manner when they want to give out sustainable linked loans and things like that. So as you can see, the conversation is picking up a lot of traction. It's quite hot. And we are getting a lot of calls from companies, and most of them trying to understand how do they get into this opportunity, and what do they need to do in setting their goals and things like that. And I will also happily share in the chat box in a bit. In November, of course, leading up to COP26, locally, the UNGC Malaysia and Brunei is having our SDG Ambition Month. And in November, we will feature a 4-day SME festival. This is all complimentary. Feel free to join us. Training and development provided by Deloitte and PwC and all these big companies. And we also have our flagship Go ESG ASEAN conference, which will be attended by the former UN Secretary General, His Excellency Ban Ki-moon. And the access is complimentary. So I'll be happy to share the link. And, any part of the world that you are from, feel free to join us as well. And, see what we are doing over here in Malaysia. Now, with that, I would like to conclude the briefing session, with a strong reminder that businesses play a critical role in achieving the global goals, and the price of inaction is evident. So the best practices must not be forgotten for better business growth. And most importantly, as Boyd mentioned earlier, it's a code red for humanity right now. And, there is no more time for us to sit down and say, let's give it another 1 or 2 years and see how it goes, right? So the cost of inaction is happening as we speak, and businesses must act quickly and act now and act with urgency. With that, I conclude my sharing. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm within my time scope, and thank you so much for everyone for providing this opportunity. And thanks to everyone who attended today. I hope you managed to capture some things from me as well. Thanks. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Edey. I hope people can hear me. My line is also unstable a little bit. In fact, the topic of businesses working together with climate was raised. Chow and I were there, and it was a big thing at the time. They were discussing this, and then they're saying businesses must play financially. They can do that. They have the cloud. And in a sense, if those big trillionaires, I suppose, if they stop going to the space for tourism and focus their money somewhere else, we might make a big difference. And this is the thing. But it's in this part of the world, we have to do something else, of course. And of course, going back to what was said by Edey and the others today, a lot of things are snippets of what we can do, something small. And looking at the chat box just now, there are a lot of suggestions as well. And although we cannot cover many of them, and I think many of them have been answered anyway through the conversations, there are 1 or 2 things that possibly that we can look at. And I think the most we can have now is, because it's already gone 5. By the way, thank you all. Most of you were in time. I think we only because we started a bit later than we should. Otherwise, you were on time really well. So I got two questions to be raised to everyone before we go to a kind of summary, which my mate Cha will cover. These two questions are quite pertinent in my view, and I guess not answered during the chat just now. But I think if we can just do this as a quick answer, we can do a bit more lengthy answers later on through emails. And I'm happy to answer some of these later on. But I just raised this to the panel, to the speakers. One is, what can Borneo do to move to a more circular economy within the island? So perhaps it's something that we can just discuss fairly quickly, or at least have some kind of quick answers. If I may, I turn to Prof first, and then we'll go on to others. As I said, I will only have two questions that I want to speak of at the moment because we are running out of time. Prof, can you answer that one? What can Borneo do to move to a more circular economy within the island?
Okay,
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, Prof.
thank you, Boyd, and all the panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Pak
you.
Thank you,
Edwin.
Pak Ho. Thank you, Pak Heng.
Okay.
Terima kasih.
Thank you,
Boyd,
Mr.
Thank you very
Boy.
much.
Thank you, Boy. And all the panelists.
Thank you, boy. Thank you, Sim.
Thank you, boy.
Thank you for being here.
Here again.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you, Piero.